Hello, friends. Part 4 of your podcast on Chapter P in the AP Stats book. Again, I'm just going through the bullet point goals that I want you to get and giving you some notes and talking a little bit about the big picture of the entire course of AP Statistics. All right, so moving on here, we've got two different kinds of variables. We can have categorical or qualitative. Qualitative, if you are taking or have taken psychology, you get a lot of qualitative versus quantitative. So some things, quantitative, as you might guess, has to do with a number. A shoe size is a number, a height, a weight, an amount of money, a distance. All these things are numbers that I can do math with. I can get an average, I can find outliers, I can work with numbers and do math. Some things like hair color, eye color, political party, ethnic background, religious preference, any of those things are categorical variables. And I can't do math with those things. But what I can do is find a percentage of a sample or population that has that characteristic. So I could say 17% of this population are redheaded, or 35% of this population has a particular religious preference, or anything like that. So with categorical variables, I can find percentages. And with quantitative variables, they're numbers that I can actually do math with, get a mean or a median or anything like that. Exploratory data analysis just means that I'm going to use this set of tools that I'm learning in this course and try to arrive at some conclusion. And the key thing here is the conclusions can't be generalized outside of the group studied. So if I do a study about how teenagers learn and the only people I study are a random sample from Kents Hill School, I can't expand that to a public school or even another private school or someplace anywhere else. What I've studied really is only relevant directly to that population at Kents Hill School. So if I study something about teenage males in California, it won't necessarily transfer. The same results wouldn't necessarily be true in Wyoming or Mexico or India or any place else. So we got to be real careful about how we state our conclusions and the meaning of the conclusions. This is a real key thing because a lot of students haven't used this word. Distribution is just how a set of numbers are distributed. As a kid learning to play cards, you'd have a distribution. That was just how many spades, how many hearts, how many diamonds, how many clubs you had. So a distribution is, if I'm looking at shoe sizes, how many people in the sample or population are size 7? How many are size 12? And how those numbers are distributed tells me about the sample and hopefully the population. So what do? I can use histograms, I can use dot plots, I can use stem and leaf plots, I can use box and whisker plots. There's also pie charts and bar graphs. And all these things you should know the difference between. It's laid out in the text, but we'll do a lot of this right at the beginning of the year in chapters 1 and 2 anyway. But these are ways of looking at distributions. All right. So basically, what I'm trying to do is look at a graph and say, what do I see? Do I see a pattern? Do I see something that indicates a tendency somewhere? All right. Pretty straightforward, but then I'm trying to justify this answer, and we're going to have some tools at hand to do that. A lurking variable is not something that is going to be on the AP exam, but it's important to be able to distinguish between a lurking variable and a confounding variable, which will be included in the AP exam. A lurking variable is something I could not have expected to happen. Um, if I was had 2 patches of grass and I was testing fertilizer and there was a spring of this really rich water under one patch and it wasn't under the other, I couldn't reasonably know that, but it would certainly affect the outcome of my and the results I got. A confounding variable is something like I know the amount of sunlight affects how grass grows, so I got to make sure that the patches both get the same amount of sunlight, water, and like that. All right, we're going to wrap this up in the next podcast.